What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, and today we need to dive into the messy topic of lying game developers and trying to ask, at what point do we forgive these people? Because it's a messy topic, but something that's really kind of come up in a big way over the course of the last couple of years. I feel like one of the first major examples that got people talking about this was No Man's Sky. When this came out in 2016, it was considered perhaps the most hyped game ever. It was promising the entire universe, literally. A procedurally generated land where you could actually fly from planet to planet and see all sorts of cool stuff like dinosaurs, flora, fauna, that every single person would have a different experience, and even the developers themselves would not be able to see everything because the game was just so massive. But here's the thing, when it actually came out, it was kind of a flat experience. In general, you kind of just drifted around trying to gather resources and didn't really have a big epic quest in a traditional sense. But since then, there have been a lot of patches and updates to try and make this a little bit closer to what was promised. Now you can at least drive around on land and build a base, but it's still not quite to what we originally hoped it could be. But here's the thing, whose fault is that? Is it Sean Murray's? I mean, he was the creative lead and the director of it, so it seems like he, being the person who had this vision and sat down in the interview chair and spewed those lies, he seems like somebody who's probably at fault for all this. But now, 2 years later, is it still his problem? Do we have the ability to forgive somebody who flat out lies? Let me give you another example, which is Aliens Colonial Marines. Now, I don't consider myself a massive Alien fan, but I definitely enjoyed the movies, and I have read the books. They're pretty cool. I really liked especially when aliens actually fought Batman. Yes, that really happened. So, when the Aliens Colonial Marines game came out, that was one of the first games I ever bought on launch. I wanted to pick it up and see what all the good talk was about, and it turned out that every single part of the marketing was actually completely false. They were actually convicted in the court of law for actually misleading people with trailers that were not at all reflective of the final experience. The AI was bad, the lighting didn't look good, and in general you could actually beat the last boss blindfolded because it was just so poorly programmed. But who is at fault? Is it the developers themselves just trying to lie for money, or was it higher-ups trying to push some sort of giant batch of deceit in order to try and make some extra profit? It's hard to say, but at the core of all this, I feel like, is the idea of forgiveness. These people did make mistakes, and many of them paid millions of dollars in court for it. So, at what point do we sort of let this go? Do we let this all sort of move on? To me, it sort of comes down to a saying we have here in Texas that I heard a lot growing up, which is, forgive quickly, forget never. Now, this basically is our way of saying, if somebody does you wrong, it's probably for a reason. It may not necessarily be a good reason, but you need to try and keep that in mind. If somebody accidentally hits you with their car or something, and you manage to live, and it messes your leg up for a couple weeks, does that suck? Absolutely. Should you be pissed as hell? Yeah, you have the full right. In fact, you could probably get away with cussing that guy out and throwing water in his face or something. I'm not going to say anything violent, but if somebody does something that bad to you, you have every right to be mad. But eventually, as Texas Spirit says, you gotta let it go. You need to move on and just kind of forgive them. But that doesn't mean you ever forget. You know deep down for the rest of your life that that person is a terrible driver. Now, the reason I'm making this analogy is because I feel like it, in a way, very closely parallels No Man's Sky's development. Let's face facts, Sean Murray made some very, very big mistakes. Every time he sat down in front of a camera, it seems like he said something else that was a giant lie. He probably didn't intend these things to be lies, but they were certainly untruths. He said things and made promises in a product that he went on to sell that flat out did not exist. So here's the the thing, how long can I stay mad at him? I'll be honest, even a year ago, I was still pretty upset. Not about the fact that I spent $60, but this is a game that just managed to not deliver on any level. A game that seemed like it was going to have giant grand space exploration and really ended up making me just kind of walk around on giant empty planets instead of entertaining me. But now, 2 years later, I sort of look back on games like Shadow of War, which said that it was going to be such a great experience, and then they ended up shoving in microtransactions the last second. Or games like For Honor, which seemed like they had the potential to be such a big, vast, gritty experience that would capture the heart and soul of medieval combat, and then they decided to put in terrible loot crates, which at launch completely broke the balance of a lot of the combat. Things like that so badly annoy me, and they get under my skin so deeply, which is why I make rants about them. But eventually, we do need to forgive. In some capacity. But I'm not saying that we should ever forget. Something that happened a couple of years ago that really, really pissed me off personally was everything involving this. An older Resident Evil, one that was really, really, really talked about and seemed like it was going to be fantastic and ended up being a dumpster fire, which is Resident Evil 6. You see, there was an interesting shift in this series back with Resident Evil 4 and 5. Turning it into a more action-focused game was a strong choice, but it managed to actually turn out pretty good. Resident Evil 4 is really, really tight and has cool stuff like weapon upgrades and cool monsters and stuff to really keep you frightened. And then Resident Evil 5 managed to take that and make it co-op. A really strong, really well done choice that managed to blow my mind even bigger and even better. This was a horror franchise that I already loved, suddenly expanded in a direction I didn't know I wanted. But Resident Evil 6, pure hype, nothing at all to even enjoy. It was a horrible game from start to finish. And deep down, that did aggravate me for a long time, to the point at which I actually didn't trust Capcom to try and handle the Resident Evil series for years. Everything that even came close to having the RE name on it was something that I treated very, very warily. At this point, I'm not going to do something jerky like send people death threats or tweet a random programmer that he should freaking kill himself. I'm not going to say stuff like that, but I was still in that phase where I had forgiven these people for the bad game they made, but I would not forget. I kept that up in my mind, and I treated everything a lot more skeptically up until we got Resident Evil 7, and it showed me that this studio, once again, understands what makes those games so great. So I guess we're really coming into a space where it comes down to when do we forgive and when do we forget? For a game like No Man's Sky, I guess I can say that I'm definitely at a point where I have forgiven Sean Murray. Do I trust him? Not at all. Am I excited to see what No Man's Sky is going to become now? Is this next giant update going to make it where it becomes the game we always wanted? That's a possibility. I am very open and excited for that possibility. But if it does not deliver, I will not be shocked, because from now on, in the back of my head, I will always remember what that man can say versus what will actually appear. That's just the way you kind of live in this general landscape of gaming now, is don't walk around with a bunch of hatred. If a game comes out and it's a really terrible sequel that just sticks with you because it doesn't do anything you were hoping it could do, well, don't get mad at the developers. Even the developers really, really screwed up. At the end of the day, they probably had a reason for it. It might not be a good reason, but it's probably a reason. Even when you look at something like Metal Gear Survive, let's face facts, that game was only created to try and milk that delicious money of Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Survive is a travesty. It is a sin to even pretend that that's part of the Metal Gear Solid universe. But here's the thing, I can't really blame the director. I can't really try and place any of this blame at the feet of any one person, because at the heart of it, we realized that somebody way up at Konami basically poked people with a stick to force them to create this. They wanted to keep their jobs, they had to hit a deadline, and they created a game that is so paltry and so pathetic, it's almost aggravating. But I still feel like we need to start trying as a community to divide anger and justice. We need to start realizing there's a difference between being outraged that a game sucks and trying to take that out on individual people. If somebody ends up pissing you off and you see a particular developer, somebody involved with something like Mass Effect Andromeda, a lot of people are really singling out specific writers of Mass Effect Andromeda, but as bad as that game was, I still don't think it was a single person who monumentally screwed it up. It was a group effort, a collective of people who had a vision in mind that they did not know how to pull the trigger on. So even though those people screwed up, I'm willing to forgive that development team, and I'm willing to be open-minded to what they make next. But I'm still not going to trust it until I have some good, hard facts that it's going to be awesome. Because here in Texas, we forgive quickly and we forget never. But what do you think about this? What is a game that came along that you felt like was overhyped trash and really kind of dug deep and made you, well, a little bit less trustworthy of future games? Let me know in the comments down below, and also tell me, are you still playing No Man's Sky? Are you going to give it another shot now that it has this big giant updates? Let me know about your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Alright, I'm gonna get back in my terrible spaceship now. I have seriously the tiniest, crappiest spaceship. Yep. Feel free to laugh at me. I suck at this game. But I'm gonna go level up. Oh, hey! I was just playing a little bit of Grand Theft Auto on my Darth Vader PSP. Are you curious what I'm going to come out with next? Well, if you click this button, you'll be subscribed to be the first to know. Also, if you click over here and here, you can see my latest review and my latest top 10. I promise, it was super good. Or it was really bad, and I'm sure you can just make fun of me in the comments. Either way, it'll be a lot of fun. Thanks so much for watching.